All right, let's talk about, I need to finish up one thing about functions yesterday I didn't tell you because this is going to come up on the test. So before I talk to you about word problems, let's talk one more time about functions. Yesterday we talked about function notation and f of x equals something and then we plug something in. Remember? I'm just kind of refreshing you here. And you'd plug the 1 in for x and simplify, right? That was yesterday. So what you also need to understand is what a function actually is. So a function is a relationship, or not a relationship, a relation that each input, and input is my x, okay? So every x has one and only one output. What do you think output is? If input's x, y, that's right. I'm going to put a couple little T-charts here while y'all write. All right, so let's think about the definition. One and only one output for each input, okay? So some of you said the first one's not a function and some of you said the second one's not. One of them is and one of them's not, okay? If I look at the value 1 for x, how many outputs or y's does it have that goes with it?
What?
How many y's go with 1? When x is 1, how many y values does it have? It could be 1, 5 or 1, 4, right? That one x, that one input has two different outputs. Do you see that? So it's not a function. Not. But over here, some of you said this was not a function, but if you look, what value corresponds to x equals 1? 7. Is there ever anything else? Nope. So 1 has one output. How about 2? How many outputs does 2 have? 1 and 3 and 4. So this one is a function. So the x is what can't repeat. You see? You can have, okay, you can't have different y's for the same x. See how this x is the same here? You can't have two different y's for the same x. It's just the definition of a function. Okay, if you have any numbers that repeat in your x column, it's not a function. Better? They can repeat in y. They can't repeat in x.
If they repeat in x, period.
Not a function.
Why don't you just say that again?
Well, because that's not the formal definition. Okay. Now, let's look at it graphically for just a minute. I'm going to put two things up here. One of them is going to be a function and one of them is not going to be a function. What you think? Now think about it. If you visualize an x and a y axis here, second one's what? Not. Because look, at this x, okay, it would have two y values. Okay? So maybe this would be 1, 2, and this would be 1, 4. The x is repeating. You see the x repeating? Same x. You can't have the same x. They're both 1s, right? Okay. So we use what we call a vertical line test. Okay? If you take a vertical line anywhere on your graph and it hits more than one time, okay? It hits twice, then it fails and it's not a function. But over here, there's no way, if you took your pencil or whatever you have and you came across, it's never going to hit more than one time. But if I come over here, oh look, it's going to hit twice. It's the vertical line test. Does that make sense? You probably have seen it at some point before. I hope anyway. Let's talk then about word problems. All the word problems you're going to have today are set up to be solved as linear equations, and you'll be able to do them in mx plus b form. Slope intercept. Okay. What's your slope here? Which one's your slope? M. What's your intercept? So when we're looking through word problems in general, our b is the constant or something that's not changing. And slope is generally the rate of change. Maybe a price per hour, maybe how much you get paid per hour, maybe this is about an airplane, how the rate that it rises per hour. All right, so let me give you this because I think the easiest thing is if we work through a few of them together. All right, I think once we do a few of them, you'll catch on to the pattern. So look at number 1. You're visiting Baltimore, Maryland. A taxi company charges a flat fee. So flat fee, that's what's not changing, right? That's what flat fee means? Correct. $3 for using the taxi and 75 cents per mile. Okay? The word per clues you in that it's a rate, okay? All right, and that you're right that you're going to times it by something, okay? So here, remember I told you we're mx plus b, and we're going to plug in for m and we're going to plug in for b. B is the one that doesn't change, it's constant. M is going to be our rate. Yes, constant's going to be $3. So the first part says write an equation that you could use to find the cost of the taxi ride in Baltimore. And it tells you let x represent the number of miles and y represent the total cost. So if you do y equals, what's your rate? 0.75x plus 3. You're going to pay $3 regardless, and then you're going to pay 75 cents a mile. Easy? Okay. How much would a taxi ride for 8 miles cost? So what are you putting in for 8 there? X, because it told us X is the miles. So if X is 8, so now we'll plug it in just like I did yesterday. 0.75 times 8 plus 3. You with me? Everybody with me? Somebody with a calculator, tell me what that comes out to be. 3/4 times 8 would be 6. Which is, so it cost you $9 to ride 8 miles in Baltimore, Maryland. It's a lot. You have to be careful because look at now C. What's C asking you? If it cost $15, So it's telling you after you plug something in, you get 15. It's wanting to know what is that something you plugged in. So it's going to be 15 equals 0.75x plus 3. Now how can I find out what x is at this point? Subtract 3. Am I going too fast?
No.
Okay. 15 minus 3 is 12? Absolutely.
And we got to put that like dollar form.
Nah.
We can do that.
Like what? Yeah. But you got to solve it for x now. You got to find out what x equals.
I thought we just did it. I thought we just.
We did. We found out what y was. So the first part asked us if you drove 8 miles, what's the cost? The next part said, if they charge you $15, how many miles did you go? So then I have to solve for this variable. What is it? 16. It's just two different questions. There's actually 3 parts. The first part is the equation. The second part is the $9, and the third part is the 16 miles. Does that make sense to everybody? Huh? Yeah. It's not many. Look how quick that was. Let's do a negative one. Let's do number 3 together.
Yeah, I guess.
Huh?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, it's got hit before. Number 3 says that there's an airplane that's 30,000 feet above the ground. And then it begins descending at the rate 2,000 feet per minute. Now, the per tells me it's going to be the slope, but because it's descending, descending is going down, right? So I need to do negative 2,000. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Write an equation to model the situation. Does anybody want to take a stab at it? Y equals what? Negative 2,000 x plus 30,000. 30,000 is the constant. That's what it was. The rate that it's dropping is 2,000. Does that make sense? I hope so. What's the altitude of the plane after 5 minutes? What do you do? Plug it in for x. So I got y equals negative 2,000 times 5 plus 30,000. Okay, so negative 10,000 plus 30,000 is?
20 minutes.
Yep, there you go. This is not hard, right? All right, let's see what else we got. Flip through them and see if you see any that look especially difficult that we can, actually, we're going to do a couple that's, that's what I'm looking at. If you look at like number 4, okay, number 4 says, while in Washington, D.C., a cab ride for the airport to the hotel is 15 miles. The total cost was $25.50. This is number 4. And it says that the cabbie charges $150 per mile. Now that per keys me in right there that it's what? The rate. What I don't know is how much it is without, like, that base, that constant, right? Do you see that? So what I have to do, if you think about it, and let's just plug in the rate, what do we have to find? We gotta find how much they charge regardless of how far they go, right? You agree? So if I know that I paid $25.50 for 15 miles, I'm gonna use this to plug in and find B. Does that make sense?
Like 15 in the track.
So I'm gonna plug in, right, 15 for X like I did in the first set. But this time I'm also gonna plug in Y because they tell me what it's gonna equal. So 25.50 equals 1.5 times 15 plus B. Does that make sense? Okay. 1.5 times 15 is what? 22.50. Subtract 22.50 and you get what? $3. All right. So, tell me this. If you get in a cab in Washington, what is their fee, not counting miles? $3. That's your flat fee, right? $3 regardless. That's your constant. How much do they charge per mile? What's your slope or your rate? $1.50. So my equation is 1.5x plus 3. Number 5 is set up the exact same way. They give you the rate or the slope, and then they give you what you can plug in and get to solve for the constant.
So that's done.
You got to do B and C. That's setting up the equation. Well, actually, that's part B. And for part C, you'll have to use that and plug in 7 for X. Yeah. Okay. All right. So number 5 will be done the same way. Let's skip ahead to number 7. The math department sponsors a math family night each year. In the first year, there were 35 participants. In the third year, there were 57 participants. You want to write an equation of how to predict how many participants there are in a year. So what you're going to do is you're going to use what's given just like it was given to you as 2 points. Okay? Remember we did that whole worksheet where we had like a T-chart and you had to write an equation of the line? Okay? So if you have 2 points and you need to write the equation of the line, what's the first thing you do? Find the what? Or slopes. How do you find slope? This is number 7. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. So 57 minus 35 over 3 minus 1. Are we all in agreement? Okay. 57 minus 35 is 22. 3 minus 1 is 2. Slope's 11. So let's fill in what we know. Y equals 11x. I don't know what B is yet. How can I find B? Come on, guys. You can do this. You can take either one of those points and plug it in. Okay? It doesn't matter which one, but pick one to use. If it was me, I'm going to use the smallest one because that's usually the easiest to plug in. So 35 equals 11 times 1 plus B. These are going to be the hardest ones for you because you have to do the most work. But if you look at it like 2 points, well, you already know how to write an equation given 2 points. Okay? Subtract 11, and you get 24's B. So now put it together. Put your M and your B in the same equation. And what's the equation look like? Yes. Does that make sense? What time is it? All right.